All present here. I, Charu Datta, student of IIT Madras, on behalf of Vande Mataram family, would like to welcome our chief guest of the day, Shri Rajiv Malhotra ji and Srimati Vijaya Viswanathan ji, respected faculty members and students, to the second Vande Mataram lecture for the academic year 2022-23. I would request our speakers to assume their place on the stage. Vande Mataram, our national song, embodies the historical cultural legacy of our nation. Our national song has inherent nature which facilitates every Bharatiya to visualize and bow down in reverence to the divine maternal image, Bharat Mata, and inspire everyone to perform their national duty. We have been proudly following the tradition of singing the national song Vande Mataram at the very beginning of every lecture. Therefore, I request everyone here to rise and join Mr. Ishan to sing our national song.
Everybody sing along with me. Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Srujalam Sufalam, Malayaj Shitalam, Sasya Shamala Mataram, Vande Mataram, Shubranjyotsna Fulakitayamini, Fulakasumita Drumadara Shobhini, Suhasini Sumadhura Bhashini, Sukhadam Varadam Mataram, Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram.
Thank you, Ishan. The Vande Mataram Forum at IIT Madras aspires to take initiatives that introduce and sensitize the student community about Bharat's rich cultural, economic, socio-political, scientific and technological heritage, its ramification today and the thoughts about the roadmap ahead. The shlok from Ramayana, Janani Janma Bhumishya Swargadapi Gariyasi, which means that mother and motherland are superior to heaven, is a philosophy which has kept us going ahead for the last 6 years in this institute and strengthened our national conscience. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome once again our guest speakers, Shri Rajiv Malhotra ji and Srimati Vijaya Viswanathan ji at this event. I request Professor Ranjit Kumar Nanda sir to welcome our guests by presenting them with fruit basket. Shri Rajiv Malhotra ji is a researcher and public intellectual on civilizational studies, world religions, and cross-cultural encounters. He was trained initially as a physicist and then as a computer scientist, specializing in artificial intelligence in the 1970s. Since the early 1990s, as the founder of his non-profit Infinity Foundation, situated at Princeton in USA, he has been researching civilizations from a historical, social sciences, and mind sciences perspective. He has authored several best-selling books that have impacted many leading intellectuals worldwide. Srimati Vijaya Viswanathan ji is a mechanical engineer by training and holds an MBA from the Wharton Business School. After a successful corporate career in manufacturing and finance based in USA, Singapore, and Europe, she turned her focus to education. Vijaya ji is active in initiatives that focus on curricula, pedagogy, and mentoring. Now, I request our speakers to deliver their much-awaited talk on Snakes in the Ganga, Breaking India 2.0. The talk will be followed by a brief Q&A session, so please reserve your questions for the Q&A sessions. Thank you.
Namaskar. It's such an honor and pleasure to be here with the Vande Mataram group. So first of all, I'd like to thank the young students of the Vande Mataram group who are interested in subjects like this. So it goes to show how aware they are, not just in engineering, but also about current affairs and politics and things that affect all our lives. So a very big hand to the Vande Mataram group. We all know that liberal arts is taking a very big step in India through the new education policy. The floodgates have been open to have foreign universities come into India, to open their shop up for liberal arts and to train young students in the liberal arts. But seldom do we ask ourselves what this liberal arts contains. While in the US and the West, liberal arts has pure sciences like physics, chemistry, and then mathematics as well, it also has a lot of social sciences and humanities, which are all with the Western drishti. Interestingly, in recent times, you have many fake fields of study, like gender studies, fat studies, queer studies, post-colonial studies, which are based on intersectional feminism, critical race theory, queer theory, and the like. Now, fat studies, one would think, because you're all STEM-oriented people, would think would solve the problems of obesity. Instead, it celebrates fatness and makes identity victim groups of people who are fat and brings about concepts like body shaming and celebrates obesity in a very big way. Now, most of these or all of these new fields which end in the word studies, they are based on subjectivity. So it has nothing to do with objective pursuit of the truth, although you probably have heard Harvard's motto has veritas, which in Latin means truth. So the goal of the university is to pursue truth, but subjectivity essentially supplements everything over objectivity. Even mathematics has become subjective, where 2 + 2 need not necessarily equal 4. And this has been sort of stated in Twitter by Harvard's public health, the Chan School of Public Health, which some of our billionaires also fund. Piramal funds the public health program in Harvard. And so they promote things like 2 + 2 is not 4. In fact, there is a Stanford professor by the name of Joe Bowler, who is also a woke, a woke professor, I would say, and she is developing California's mathematics curriculum in their schools, and California's mathematics curriculum in junior, elementary, middle, and high schools have plummeted, and it's amazing to know that she has nothing to do. Her background is not in mathematics; it's in social science. So people who are developing textbooks in mathematics have not been trained in mathematics, and they are actually making these, huge changes in pedagogy and curricula. In fact, one of Baiju's experts for mathematics is Dr. Bowler. So just check that out. And it's also coming to India, just to show. So people are paying money, going to Baiju's and getting this training for their children. Now, the entire umbrella of grievance studies, basically many American professors are also very peeved. They do not like what these people put out in terms of scholarship. So a bunch of people got together and wrote hoax papers to see if grievance studies journals would accept them. And guess what? They wrote 20 odd papers, and I think 14 odd of them got accepted. Some of them were awarded great prizes as well. So, for example, there's a paper on research on rape culture among the dogs at a dog park, and this research went, to talk about how they studied hours of observing dogs humping in a dog park, and then came up with all kinds of patriarchy type issues among dogs. Now in America, so I've talked about liberal arts coming into India, but one has not looked at what liberal arts has done for American students. The US student loans are exorbitantly high, and Biden had to sort of forgive some of these loans. And students that study these kinds of areas don't get a job because they're really not skilled for anything. The universities charge the same amount of money for a class in fat studies as they do for metal forming or VLSI design. So it's become a money maker for the universities with very less substance. Now, the praxis of all of this, so you have this whole body of grievance studies in terms of scholarship developed, and with all Marxism, pedagogy and scholarship, you have something called praxis, which is the application of this in the real world. So one of the applications is the DEI office. So when they are dismantling something, they also develop infrastructure to make this dismantling viable and quick and efficient. So you have all over US campuses diversity, equity, and inclusion offices with actually a dean in charge. And I was very sad to know a few months ago that IIT Delhi has a diversity, equity, and inclusion office. In their inauguration, we had Justice Chandrachud making statements on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like all Marxist terms, everything sounds really nice. Diversity, who's not for diversity? But diversity actually means people who look different but have the same thinking. So they look different and have different sexual orientations and preferences, but they think alike. So diversity is actually not really diversity. And inclusion is achieved by excluding certain groups of people who have had historical, in their view, historical privilege, and hence are oppressors, so they are not included. And equity essentially sounds very much like equality, and one would conflate the two, but equity has nothing to do with equality. Equity is to ensure that outcomes are all equal. So despite reservations in our IITs, they feel that the product, the students coming out are all not equal. And how do you make them equal? Is by diminishing the standards of entrance, or even doing away with examinations altogether, because anything to do with merit, which I think Rajiv ji can talk about a little more, is considered something that's born out of patriarchy. And like I said, you cannot objectively argue with all of them because it's a subjective field. All these fields are subjective, but they've entered mathematics, they've entered the STEM fields, they've entered the IITs. So you have DEI offices even in IIT Delhi. Now, so one of the things they do is to have these kinds of structures for dismantling. The another thing that they have is to produce activists. So the social sciences, what they do is they don't get jobs, but they do produce activists who are all the time, on the streets, lifting their hands and asking for this right and that right and talking about oppression. Now, to give you an example, right, there is I wouldn't say scholar, but there is a person by the name of Sayanthan Datta, right, who has an MSc in cognitive sciences, but he teaches writing and oral communication in Kriya University. So Ashoka and Kriya are the new trendy liberal arts colleges. Everybody is talking about how liberal arts are great. You have many subjects and you get different viewpoints and all of that. All sounds good. Like everything leftist, it sounds great on paper. But anyway, let's go back to Sayanthan Datta. So he has a master's in cognitive sciences, but he teaches oral communication and writing. Essentially, he's an activist. So Datta received a diversity reporting grant in 2021 from the National Association of Science Writers. It's an American organization that promotes these kinds of woke activists. Now, the grant was given to him. It's to explore an impressive range of issues affecting indigenous peoples, neurodiverse individuals, I don't even know what that means, and the transgender non-binary community. So when the IIT chief commented that the IIT Madras chief commented somewhere that there is no discrimination at IIT Madras and that we will not allow it, and if there is, we will deal with it severely, right? Datta tweeted, IIT Madras is a hotbed of casteist discrimination. In fact, IITs survive on casteism. IITs produce castes to continue the myth of merit. So this is what happens when you open up the floodgates to liberal arts colleges. And this is what students at Kriya, this is the kind of person students at Kriya are learning from. Ashoka costs 10 lakhs a year. And there are people who are paying this for 4 years. The other whole thing is about pronouns. People's choices and preference should not, involve forcing others to use pronouns. Now, a pronoun is generally used when the person is not there. So if there's a proper noun, and if a male wants to have a female name, we will honor that and call the person by whatever name they choose. It's a proper noun. But a pronoun essentially is something that you talk about a person, right? And so they force you even when they are not involved in a conversation. So, and if you have to cave into the trans activist demand, otherwise you'll be called transphobic. Now, this is sort of the devolving of the English language. And I'll just leave you with a quotation from Time. Quote, Time spoke to genderqueer author and illustrator Maya Kobabe on about ear work. It's her work or his work, EIR, ear work. The efforts to restrict access to ear writing and what is EY make of the current cultural moment. Now, one is supposed to remember, so it's not just he, she, they, them. It's all these funky, whatever people feel like, they make up their pronouns, and one is supposed to remember them and use those pronouns while talking about them. I can't think of a more narcissistic way of presenting oneself when you force others to use personal pronouns. And if somebody looks like a male, we address them as he, and somebody looks like a female, regardless of what their scene is, we will address them as a female. And I think language is meant for communication, and this sort of arm twisting and forcing people to use, yes, especially young people, to put their pronouns and make this use of pronouns a widely acceptable thing, which it has become, is a very sad turn. And I think as youngsters, you should, stand up against it. Because nobody can force us to, if a narcissist comes and forces you to use certain pronouns, you should not oblige, because that's not part of language. Language has a specific need in society. It fulfills a certain specific need. So we need to make sure we don't, cave into these sorts of pressures from these leftist woke activists. With that, I leave it to Rajiv ji. Thank you.
Thank you to Vande Mataram Forum for organizing this event. I have prior experience and pleasure of being invited by them, and it's refreshing to see students take up this sort of cause. So thank you very much. Just a quiet note, when Vishwadit comes, will he be able to enter? You're sorry about that, yeah. So the book, I want to talk about the book. There's so much else to talk about, but as far as book is concerned, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, it's not any closer. So as far as first of all, what is the book about? We should talk first about that, because otherwise, the book is a discovery, it presents a discovery of original findings of anti-Indian civilizational discourse, which we're calling poison, being emanated from some of the biggest think tanks in the world, and we focused on Harvard because that is the big, we call it the nest of snakes, where they're producing these snakes and spreading them from there. And so the book talks about who are the snakes, what type of people are they. They are largely Indians. And what kind of them are they? Researchers, students, activists, journalists, government leaders, corporate people, IAS people being trained there. So there's a large variety of snakes. So you can have random data point here, there, it doesn't make any sense. So that's not what the contribution of the book is. It's not a lot of data points, because you all come across a whole lot of them. What the book has, I believe, achieved is, what has been our goal, is first come up with what is the theoretical framework that unifies all of this stuff that's going on. In other words, what's the DNA of the poison? What is the tattva, or the DNA of the poison itself? And what is its history, how it originated, where it originated, and how it evolved over time and ended up being this particular kind of ideology. So it's a history and theoretical framework of the ideology itself, which is a very unified ideology. The whole point is to show you that all these sporadic things that you are all complaining about are not sort of random things. They all come from a common, cohesive, well thought out ideological framework that is not trivialized. You cannot trivialize it. It's a point of view, it's a metaphysics that's quite profound. We have problems with it, but it is quite profound. And unless you understand it, then you are just fighting fires here and there. So that is one thing the book does, is to establish a theoretical framework of the large variety of things coming out. Second thing it does is it looks at how this framework is being used to come up with one product, another product, another product. So as Vijaya said, there may be something about pronouns, there may be something about cancel culture, there may be something about anti-Brahmins, there may be something about anti-IIT, which is what I'll focus on. So there's a whole lot of things that seem like are completely unrelated. You'd wonder, what does anti-IIT have to do with pronouns? Or what does, something which is attacking, a certain civilization and a certain history, what does it have to do with some rituals we're doing, or what does it have to do with anything else? But it does. So the unifying factor is very important for you, because you're theorists, you're theoretical people in your training, so you have a model, you have a theoretical model, and then you can have many, many instances and applications of that model. And only when you understand the science behind a certain thing, you can develop the engineering and the technologies, because they're all based on that. So there is a theoretical framework which is very unified, that the people at Harvard and so on have developed. And that this book explains and gives a rebuttal to it. And then it tells you what is the mechanism by which this framework is being deployed to produce many, many kinds of products. And then the third thing it does is it looks at what is the machinery and infrastructure being used for all this work, who is behind it, who funds it, and so on. And then finally, how does it all land up in India? Why should you care? How does it land up in India? So there's 4 parts. What's the theory? What are its applications? What is the underlying engine, the infrastructure which is producing this work? And how is it exported to India, and where does it end up? So unless you get all this, the book hasn't done its job. So that's really what it's about. Now, while the size is scary, you don't have to read the whole book. It's written so that if you read the introduction, which is 30-40 pages, then you read the 1-page overview of every chapter. Just 1-page overview gives you the essence, what is the takeaway message, what is the summary of that chapter. That's all you need to do, and you will understand 100% of what the book is trying to say. Then the rest of each chapter, the details of each chapter, are the proof. So you have a theorem, and then you go through a long proof. So if you just want to understand what are the claims we are making, you read the introduction and you read the overview for every chapter. That's all of it is 60, 70, 80 pages, and you will understand the whole thing. Then you can read any chapter in any sequence. They're independently written. So chapter 4 is on the attack on IIT and our review of that attack and our response to it. Now you can read just that chapter. You don't have to read something else if you don't want to. This is why so it's multiple books, multiple levels in one book. The reason it's done this way is, while most people need to read 100 pages, 150 pages, the point is they have all the backup and how other things are related. So as you get deeper in the conversation, you will not be stranded, you will not take a position and then find out you don't know how to back it up. You can go to the book and back it up, because we have over 1,600 references, over 100 pages of bibliography. So there is a lot of backup you can rely on with confidence, because we're quite sure of that. This is why it's written at one level for anyone to read very quickly and understand and participate in these debates. And know when people say something weird, then you can look up and you know why they're saying it, where it's coming from, and what is our response to it. And then you can as you get deeper into the debate, you can then drill deep on that particular point and get all the backup you need. So it's written in that way. Now, for the rest of my talk, because I have been given limited time and I have lots to say, but I will focus only on the IIT attack. The attack on IIT, because you are IITians. So the IIT attack has several building blocks. The first, we have reviewed all these books in great detail, and no IITian has reviewed them, by the way. I mean, this is surprising. One of the things I want to talk to the faculty member who's in charge of the global alumni is that the global alumni have not reviewed, they have not taken on this issue. They have not even noticed it. I went to the Pan-IIT people who are getting these awards for the IITian of the year and all that, and some of them are my friends, and I said, why don't you take up this issue? And they want to be non-controversial. They would rather get some award and be in the good books and of everybody. So somebody has to take it on. So I'm, as a non-IITian, I was a pure science student, did my physics and went from a physics and computer science, but not IIT. So as a non-IIT, and I'm doing this, sticking my neck out and fighting for IIT. And at the very least, they should join and help and all that, but they haven't done as of yet, which is why I thought this meeting here is very special for me to tell you about it. So there is a book by a Harvard professor called The Caste of Merit, Engineering Education in India, Ajantha Subramanian. She's a Harvard professor, and the book is published by Harvard University Press, so it's not some trivial thing on the fringes. It's the most prestigious academic press in the world. And it is taught, it's a bestseller. This person goes around giving talks. I believe she had a presentation here at IIT also. But she won't accept our invitation to debate because we've said things that maybe she doesn't want to respond to. Now her thesis is that IITs are basically a Brahminical kind of a institution to oppress Dalits. That's her view. And this meritocracy is a sham. Meritocracy is just a cover for caste. Instead of saying this is a caste institution, they use the word merit, but it actually means that only. And she gives a whole history of this. Her history, and I'm going to go through, just flip through some pages to give you a flavor, and then you can read the book in more detail. Her history of science and technology in India is a kind of a colonial history to begin with. She doesn't use people like Dharampal, who given a more authentic account of Indian history. And she says things, I'm just going to tell you in random sequence what she says so you can put general picture together. She says majority of the IITians are male, and therefore it's a male patriarchy, and it is reproduced because of the Hindu family system. And so these guys are Brahmins, they come from Hindu family, and therefore they are males, and she gives a lot of examples of how there is this masculinity and macho brotherhood and all that going on in IITs. So now being an anthropologist, anthropologists don't give you statistically relevant, they don't have to prove that this was a statistically relevant sample. They just have anecdotes that suit them. So you go to a village and you find out all the people who have a complaint and you say there is oppression going on, but you have no numbers. There is no numbers here, no statistics, no hard evidence, no references saying that this is backed by anything. It is just anecdote, lot of story, so-and-so person met me and then he said this and it was this very moving story and he was oppressed and this happened to him. It's a lot of sensationalized storytelling, very beautifully written. And Harvard University Press, shame on them, did not go and do a peer review asking anybody from the other side, which means you people, to comment on it. And you would do a peer review. I mean, we are criticized that, hey, you should have peer review. This is Harvard University Press. No peer review by an IITian would pass this kind of nonsense, but it is published. So then she comes up with this Pierre Bourdieu, who is a well-known French Marxist, and I have also quoted him many times, who has this idea that culture is a form of capital. So capital is not just money. Capital can be culture. So your knowledge can be a capital. Your knowledge can be a form of capital. So she feels that the IITians are capitalists in the sense that they have this knowledge and they are transmitting this knowledge to each other. Next generation of Brahmins, the next generation of Brahmins, they're keeping it to themselves. And so this Brahminism is now in the form of IIT merit. This is a very important point she makes. And then she says that engineering should be about practical things, material things which you do with your hands, but because that would be Shudra work, the IITs taught mainly conceptual work because that is Brahmin work. So so she says, she gives this history that some British guy also said that the reason people can't be good engineers here because these Brahmins don't want to work with their hands. And so I don't know if she ever went into a lab or did anything. I think she just kind of made it up. And so she says that the emphasis on theory and the reason that they are doing so well in computer science is because it is mainly theoretical and conceptual, and therefore the suits the Brahmin framework. A Brahmin head is wired up for that. And then she talks about the amount of things I could tell you is so huge. I'll just go very quickly through this. Then she says that in the colonial era, the colonizers, British, they found the Brahmins very useful for administrative work because they were educated and they could do conceptual work. They become babus. And then they needed help in engineering because they wanted to build railroads and they wanted to build all kind of things. They needed Indian engineers. And they found that the Brahmins were good at it because they were educated type of people. But the Brahmins resisted entering engineering because they did not want to get their hands dirty. They were not supposed to touch and all that things. And so they had to come up with 2 tiers of education for engineering. There is all these schools where they teach the trades for the Shudras, and they became the Polytechnic. That's the origin of the Polytechnic. And then they came up with the engineering for the Brahmins. So it is blamed on the conspiracy between the British and the Brahmins to come up with this 2-tier education system. And hence IITs are a product of this Brahmin origin. This is sort of the theory that has come up with. Then she says that, then again all this is about male-dominated masculinity of Brahmins and patriarchy, which is why they do well, because this whole system is set up for such people. Now, I have so many stories that I have flagged. There is no reason to believe that this is a typical story. You can have a story, but as you know, as scientists, it has to be statistically significant. It cannot be just some one-off thing, and then you make a whole case out of it. So this is so she says that the Tamil Brahmin mobility is a form of cultural genius which is being exploited, and this is all the capacity to articulate it and then to call it merit. So merit, she's against merit basically, the concept of merit, because she says that the idea of merit is inherently Brahmanical and exploits Dalits. So then there is this whole business of she's blaming the IITians who formed networks to help each other. Point is that Harvard has got the biggest networks. If you look at Harvard Business School, she's one of the most elite people herself, if you look at it. Harvard's got all these big alumni and all that, but she blames IITians and she gives a list of all the TIE, the group and the Pan-IITians, and they are in Silicon Valley and they're helping each other, and they're all being trained to build the IIT brand, but the Harvard is building Harvard brand. I mean, Stanford built the Stanford brand, Princeton built the, I mean, everybody, I don't understand the logic, but there's no counter-argument allowed here. So she says, then she says that the famous 60 Minutes show, which in the US is a very famous investigative reporting show, she says that they did a piece on IITs and they lauded IITians' brain power, and they said that this is a group that has more influence than the combination of Harvard, MIT, and Princeton together. And so she's very upset at that. She's very upset. And she says that she also blames this Vinod Khosla, he's also part of this, and then she says Forbes did a story on IITians of Silicon Valley, the Pan-IIT. Then she says she blames that IIT was quoted favorably by Bill Clinton, Joe Biden, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, all of them sort of really into this Brahmanical conspiracy, and she has to educate them that you guys better stop praising these IIT people because they're horrible people. So that's kind of the way. Then she says, then she moves on to BJP has worsened the problem, because she says that all of this, Modi has embraced the diaspora, and when he came to US, he met all these people, and this is all very bad and whatnot. And then she's very upset that there is IIT Madras has a e-cell, which is for startups, and they are taking credit. They've done 130 plus startups, 150 ideas have been bootstrapped, 250 internships. This is as of that particular year. And so she says that this is expanding the Brahmin, oppression further. So, and there's a massive state, government, nation state, the government of India supporting these IITs, and there needs to be oversight. So I'll tell you where she's headed. So then she says, the rise of Narendra Modi has augured another shift in IIT and projects of self-fashioning. In the United States, this has been seen most clearly in IITians' endorsement of the BJP's neoliberal capitalism. More recently, Modi's style of authoritarian populism has also garnered support in US and in India. And in India, this is evident in an escalation of cultural nationalistic policies on IIT campuses. So I guess your Vande Mataram would be in her next edition of the book, probably. So you know, you guys have to watch it. So then she talks about problems. Example is that they are now celebrating Sanskrit in IIT. So it's a really big problem for her. And they have separate dining halls for vegetarians and non-vegetarians, which is another Brahmin kind of a problem. So this goes on, and she's echoing the US foreign policy that says India doesn't have human rights and social justice, and this whole US Commission on Religious Freedom says there's no religious freedom in India. So she's sort of quoting all that also to make her case, which I don't know what it has to do with all this. Then she says that the inequality has increased since Modi, away from a rights-based approach. In other words, the rights of people are being compromised, and there is more moral policing, which undercuts the lower caste claim to education. So this business, and then she says that this United States should change its merit-based immigration. It's very interesting. H-1B visa should become caste-based. You have caste quotas. She wants to. This is a very serious matter, because I'll tell you where it has gone. There are lawsuits on this. And then only, she says this is choking off the possibility for a genuinely popular democracy in India. So you're not having a, so you know, you wonder sometimes when they come up with weird thing that your democracy is a sham and you're fascist, you wonder who's doing all this. So we are uncovering who's doing it. They are powerful people. Now, the deeper than this is a book on caste and race by an African American. This is #1 New York Times bestseller, a Pulitzer Prize winner, author, Oprah's book club, very, very big news. And basically the thesis of this is that caste is the architecture on which racism started in USA. Caste is an architecture. The British learnt it in India. Then they came to America, they brought this idea, and they started racism. And the Germans learnt this Sanskrit, Shastra, and this how to oppress and all of that, and it helped Nazism, fascism. So caste is the mother of American racism and German fascism. This is where, now you may say, wow, but the point is people are believing it. This is wokeism. This is the theory behind wokeism and how wokeism is being applied to India. See, we are for the blacks rising up against the whites in America. They have had a certain history and they should be doing it. But we are not for mapping that history onto India and saying that caste is racism and Dalits are the blacks of India and Brahmins are the whites of India, and the whole Indian history has to be seen through the drishti, the lens of American racism. That is what we don't think is valid at all. So this is the issue that we are having. And then there is another Harvard guy called Suraj Yengde. So he's a Dalit, and Harvard loves him because he's come up with all these theories, and he says that the Dalits are the blacks of India. And so he's come up with this thing called Afro-Dalit. Afro-Dalit is a kind of mobilization, a movement. So he's unifying the blacks, he's poisoning the blacks. So this is a snake poisoning the blacks against India. This is a very new thing. You know, people like Bobby Jindal, Indian earlier, were honorary whites. They were trying to become whites. Now we have people like Suraj Yengde wanting to become honorary blacks. It's a new fashion to become honorary black, and to, you know, then they'll patronize you, then all. So now comes legal action in the United States. So a lawsuit was filed against Cisco in Silicon Valley that said that they are oppressing Dalits. because they have a Brahmin, the boss was a Brahmin, and somebody said that I'm a Dalit, I didn't get promotion, whatever. And so they wanted a census of Indians who are working there, caste census. Because large companies are required to do a race census to see if the blacks are, being oppressed and so on, And so the lobbying, and there are now a lot of organizations that have changed the law to say that caste is race. Harvard University has made that policy. Caste is race. And casteism is therefore racism. And you can apply racism laws, which are very, very tough in America. These laws are criminal laws. If somebody goes to the HR department and says, racist bias and all, they're required to conduct an investigation, and all these things happen, very scary things happen. And the company wants to comply, because otherwise they'll have a bad reputation and their stock price will go down and they will be in trouble, and they may ask some CEO or some top guy to resign because there's a racism charge against him. All that is very serious. So now all of this racism baggage and racism violence and problems and legal action is coming to caste, coming to Indians, and this is going to attack the Indians in Silicon Valley. They have all openly criticized, made a list of all these, that this guy is Brahmin, this Sundar Pichai, and this fellow, that fellow, and therefore there's over-representation of Brahmins, and not enough Dalits and not enough minorities from India who need to be given a boost. And because the production of such people based on so-called merit, and the United States gives them visa based on that, and the American companies promote them based on that, that is a sham. That is actually caste privilege being considered as merit. So caste is a form of merit, and meritocracy is a propagation of caste into the next generation. This is the basic DNA, the basic tattva of the poison. One aspect of this whole book's theory about poison hidden in the snakes in the Ganga that you don't see, but this poison is spreading. That's the point of this book. So now I get calls from Indians working in Microsoft. I have a lot of emails from Facebook, Google. I made a little group. They're very scared to come out, but I know what they're doing. So what they're doing is this consulting company called Equality Labs, which is in collaboration with these Harvard people, is New York based. They have been, they go to Silicon Valley and they say that you should do a caste census. We will do it for you. Americans don't know what is caste. They see all Indians look the same and they can't tell. Whereas blacks and white you can tell. So they say we have to educate you on caste because you'll get in trouble. You'll get in legal trouble otherwise. And you'll be considered negligent. When we warned you and you ignored our warning, management will be considered negligent and you'll have a case on you. So these people say, okay, Bapre, you will pay you now. What do you want us to do? So these people charge like $75,000 an hour to conduct caste sensitivity workshop. So they've gone to Microsoft, and Satya Nadella, according to one person who wrote to me, Satya Nadella just sat quietly and just listened to the whole thing, didn't say a word, because he was advised by the HR department that if you defend, if you argue, if you raise a question, you will be considered racist for denying. You will be considered a racist in denial, which means you don't want to admit. So you have to admit and confess. What they want is that all the Indians sitting there should confess, stand up and say, yes, I apologize, I am casteist, I come from caste background, I'm so sorry, I have done all this, my parents were bad, my tradition is bad. And you say that, then they'll clap, you're good, otherwise, you're not good. So this is a kind of oppressive pressure going on. And these caste sensitivity workshops are very common now in Silicon Valley. And I'm getting testimonials and so on. And after this book is launched in India, I'm going to California and various places to do these events. So I will also do events in these companies. And they're saying that if whoever sponsors this in Facebook or Google will be tagged, and so we'll do it privately. We want your consultation and your advice. What do we do? We don't know how to answer. If we answer, then we'll be accused. So I told them, you blame me. You take my book or take this chapter out of it, and you can say there is a different position, a different opinion. So some of them have gone to there is a guest lecture series, and proposed my name. because they have all these kind of people who are giving this casteist view of Indian culture and Indian tech, and these people have gone and said, let's get a contrarian view, and it's being considered, but they are resisting because they do not want a guy like me. They do not want a guy like me. They would rather that and the Indians are very naive. They come out of places like this. They have no training. They have no background. They don't know what to say, and they're scared. And the easy way out is just quietly do your job and don't mess with it, because you don't want to be fired. You don't want your visa revoked. You know, they're so happy they got all this money and salary, and so they're very obliged to the company. And if they have to put up with insult about their heritage, they'll say, okay, I'll put up with it. This is very sad. This kind of thing is happening. The Indian embassy doesn't know what to do. The Indian consulates don't know what to do privately. They'll say, हाँ बहुत अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं, आप करिए. How much can one guy do, you know, with two of us? We need help. So I went to some friends who are big shots in IIT alumni. They run this pan IITs here and there. They run TIA chapters in various places. Privately, they'll either say, is this, so it's happening, maybe it's true only, maybe we should be apologetic, maybe we haven't, but you know, they don't know. They don't know what to say. They don't know which way to come out, but they're hedging their bets, and ultimately they're trying to stay out of controversy, because they're doing very well for themselves. Why should they fight for you? They are not in trouble because they made their money. They're okay. So I'm saying, look, you owe kind of help to the tradition and to the institution that made you successful. The institution that made you a billionaire, you should at least give something back and protect them. You have to stand up. You have standing. You are a rich man. You have a lot of resources. You stand up and fight for your tradition. But you will not find a Satya Nadella fighting for the tradition. You will not find Sindhur Pichai. There are hundreds of these guys in various capacities. You will not find Vinod Khosla standing up and saying all this bullshit, what is this going on, you will not find them doing it. And so I know a large number of IITians, so I'm one of the reasons I'm here is I want India-based, IIT-based kind of support group. At least, at least there ought to be some organized response to all of this. Interestingly, this book, I gave so many copies to so many IITians. I said, look, you read it for yourself. I'll mark up the pages, you read for yourself. They're not interested. They don't want to go public with it. They wish I would not write all this. I said, what do you mean if you wish I don't write? They feel that, okay, maybe, fine, we'll just lie low. That's the attitude. I think it's a bad attitude because like a lot of the Tamil Brahmins got chased out of Tamil Nadu, and they end up in Mumbai. They put up a whole lot of things over there, and then they end up in Silicon Valley, and now they're going to be chased at Silicon Valley. So now you will have quotas there. That's the prospect we are finding, and it's not just Tamil Brahmins. And it's not only Brahmins. It's all Indians. All Indians, if they come and divide up us, it's bad for Dalits. Because the assumption is that they are not able to compete on merit. Why are we assuming they can't compete on merit? I know a lot of Dalits who are very good, solid scholars. I know them personally who are good, solid technocrats and engineers. I've worked with some of them, and I don't see there's any reason they cannot be, if given equal opportunity, why they cannot be just as good. So I think that's the way to move the country forward, rather than dividing people and making them fight. What is happening is that the caste sensitivity and awareness in Silicon Valley is suddenly going up among the top people, among the board members, and they'll want a caste Dalit on the board. All these things will happen. Then they will want that the subsidiaries in India should be doing caste census to see if there's Microsoft in India has too many people upper caste and not enough lower caste or minorities, and then Google and Facebook and Amazon and Apple, all these guys. And then the next will be if they are outsourcing to TCS is supplying them with programmers and they're doing software, they'll say that our outsourcing policy should also require that the supplier has to be complying with these American laws. So this will spread. And this is a serious problem. I could go on talking about it for a long time. I just wanted to give you an overview, and then we will discuss more during Q&A. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. This was truly an eye-opening talk. I believe everyone would agree with it. And now we shall have a brief Q&A session. Before we open the forum to audience, we have one question from Professor L.S. Ganesh. His question is, I would read it out for you. To what extent do you feel we may be paranoid or wrong about the breaking India forces, or are we being most realistic? To what extent and in what ways can Bharat be splintered?
So there are two separate questions. The first one, are we being paranoid? I think when the first Breaking India book came out a dozen years ago, people asked that question. They no longer ask, because the evidence of breaking India forces all over. People accept it now. In fact, it's created a huge awareness, whether it is this farmer riot or whether it is this thing against Article 370. You see all the time, you see Washington Post writing articles, Indians only, writing in New York Times, in Economist, in Wall Street Journal, BBC, I could go on and on. The whole Western media is full of this thing. It has been. You very rarely see the contrary point of view from the Indian side. So obviously this breaking India force is there. And then the politics of European Union and people raising this issue in the US Congress, and the United States Secretary of State coming to India and wagging his finger and lecturing to Jaishankar and telling him, oh, you know, you don't have a democracy and all that. I mean, what more do you want? This is all going on. So there is no evidence, there is no lack of evidence. It's just one thing after the other. You'd have to be somebody totally sleeping if you don't even understand that this is what it is. Because this is the breaking India forces we're talking about. We're not talking about breaking India in the sense of tanks and military planes dropping bombs. We're talking about ideological breaking India. We're talking about discourse. The narrative is an anti-narrative. Whether it is this, this Aryan-Dravidian divide being exploited in one place, or whether it is the caste divide, or whether it is this male-female gender divide, whether it is divide of minority religions, looking at all the fault lines and dividing them up is an old British thing. And now it is more subtle and sophisticated, being done by the Americans. So I think there is no doubt about it. Now the second thing is, what can India do about it? Well, first you have to become aware of the problem. Right now, so if you ask me what to do about this particular thing I've raised, one is the IITians need to do something, because your institution and what you stand for and who you are is under threat. And first thing you have to ask is, how come nobody included us and consulted us and got our viewpoint and published all this stuff and started making legal cases on it? Why aren't we included? There's something wrong. There should have been a peer review. And when these things are being discussed at Harvard, why are we not invited? I mean, this is a kind of against the academic ethos and academic standards. When they are having these conferences and they're going around doing all this, why aren't they including IT people to come and give testimony what you think about it? After all, they are caricaturizing you, profiling you in a negative way. They should give you the option to participate. Then the other thing is that the Indian billionaires are funding this. In this book we've got a whole chapter on Mahindra Humanities Center at Harvard. And they've got this very famous postmodernist who questions the legitimacy of India as a nation state, who questions the democracy is legitimate, all of this stuff. And then there is Lakshmi Mittal and Family South Asia Institute at Harvard. Lakshmi Mittal gave $50 million for it and keep funding it. And Bajaj funds it and various people fund it. And that is a place where all kind of seminars are done. We've quoted hundreds of these people. We've quoted from their website. We've quoted from their own YouTubes. So you can watch it and decide for yourself what you want to think about it. So what to do about it, one is, you should question the billionaires. And we intend to do that. In the next trip, we intend to go to Mumbai and invite them and have discussions with them and ask them, what do you mean? Do you support this wokeism, this ideology? Then be open and tell us. On the one hand, you are this Desh Bhakt and you're getting this Padma Award and all this stuff. On the other hand, you're using your money to do things which are not very good for the country. Why are you doing both? Why are you double-faced or something? We don't know. We want to ask them. We want to give them benefit of doubt. But maybe they can change. Maybe they can change their posture towards Harvard. Maybe they can say, using my name, family name, and my money, I don't want you to do these things because it's bad for my country. Maybe they can say that. Maybe some Indian tech billionaires who are of great power and importance can stand up and say, hell no. So those are some of the remedies we wish and we hope will happen.
I also think there's just so much evidence. I don't think it's breaking India. It's sort of partially broken India. It's just not only in the IITs. It's gotten so bad as to enter the education system in elementary, middle and high school with this sort of gender fluidity, confusing young children, sexualizing young children, and even endorsing and celebrating pedophilia. So these are serious issues. Pedophilia, a pedophile is now called MAP, a minor attracted person, to destigmatize pedophilia. These are serious issues. You might think it's only IIT and so what's in it for me? It's coming to schools. And this is really serious, where Ashoka University in fact has, in their gender studies department, has seminars and conferences on education and how to bring, what is the role of pornography in educating school children, because they feel that pornography has a role in educating. They want children to push boundaries on sexual experimentation, because not pushing the boundaries is again something that the male patriarch wants, and that's also born out of patriarchy. So these are serious issues. You're talking about destigmatizing pedophiles. You're talking about, there is something called a kinky collective, a representative from a group called Kinky. These are all considered scholars. So they come in and they talk about how does India and Indians, how do we legitimize kinky sexual practices, so that, because that also is, again, they are a victim group, and it's all by Brahminical patriarchy that they've been made victims. So this is all over, and these are mainstream universities. It's not like some fringe group doing something. So I think it's a partially broken India. So there's no doubt about that.
Before opening the forum to audience, I would like to say that please introduce yourself before asking the question, and please keep your questions short and crisp. Thank you.
I'm Ramalingam from the Electrical Engineering Department. I have two questions. One is about FCRA and the other is about Suraj Yengde. The old Breaking India 1.0, the oxygen that feeds the Breaking India forces are the foreign contributions, and that has gone up exponentially. So, but we are not still considering banning or repealing FCRA. So what can be done about that? The other thing is about Suraj Yengde. You said in some of your talks that you agreed with some of what he said, but mostly you disagree with his. Can you elaborate on this?
Thank you. So the first thing, FCRA, well, I have news on that now they are not using FCRA as much, they are using FDI. So for instance, there is a Omidyar network in India, very highly regarded venture capitalist. They funded about a couple hundred ventures, startups, tech ventures, using FDI, not FCRA. But while it is set up as a for-profit and as a tech startup, the real agenda is social change. The real agenda, which they clearly say, is social engineering of the bottom 500 million people of India, the unreached, to digitize them, to empower them. But what does, these are nice words. You want to, of course, digitize them and you want to empower them. But what it is doing data collection about their problems, about their grievances, about their vulnerabilities, about their emotions, about their conflicts with each other. All this database being mined by people sitting in the United States should be a cause for concern, because these are able to, you can create riots, you can create conflicts, you can sway people's elections, choices, and so this entry through digital, through digital transformation of India, also gives them a kind of, it trains their machine learning algorithms. They can learn about Indians in every district and state and every jati and community and language. They can learn more about the Indian mind and how to manipulate it than the Indians themselves know, because they have the data, and if they have the data, they have the algorithms. So this is a dangerous thing, and this is not being done with FCRA money, it's being done with FDI money. And FDI money India needs and India wants. So now how do you come up with a kind of a way to filter whether this is going to be good or bad for India? China has made very clear policies on what FDI cannot do, what foreign investments are not allowed to do, which has to do with social media, with social engineering, anything to do with policies. These guys are holding, Omitiyar Network holds all kind of events all the time. They're very proud of it, to talk about, impact investing, social justice issues, social justice against this minority community or that minority community. Is really none of their business. That's the job of government. That's the job of Indian NGOs to do. It's not a job of some foreign guy. We heard of George Soros. People are very suspicious of George Soros for good reason. He's doing this social engineering in India. But Omitiyar, at half his age, got 4 times, 5 times as much money. He's worth $20–25 billion. And so he is really into this ideological, very left-wing ideological kind of transformation of India. So that is not even FCRA. They don't use FCRA. So there are a lot of people who've decided, and we've attended some events, some conferences, some papers they published saying, avoid FCRA, then you will not be under surveillance and nobody will scrutinize you. Bring it as a for-profit investment. And that's FDI. And you don't have to make a profit, or if you make a profit, it's good, you reinvest it and do more of it. So the use of technical startups and venture capital to create a whole lot of these ventures and is the new trend. Some of these ventures are looking at the whole history of elections, the whole history of every politician, the whole history of where they ran, what they did, all their speeches, this sort of thing. So there are ventures where, using facial recognition, they are tagging an important person everywhere he goes, wherever his face is there, who he is with, who he shakes hands with, and who he doesn't shake hands with. So one day, if they want, they'll find out that, okay, Mukesh Ambani, did he shake enough hands with Dalits or Muslims or not? Maybe he's shaking hands only with Brahmins and with Hindus, and very little with Muslims. So there'll be a rating called ESG rating, saying that his social justice is bad. His social justice rating is bad. So this use of technology to kind of enter into the psychological profiling, social profiling, political profiling of India and interference is a very dangerous game. This is what's going on. The second question was on Suraj Yengde. See, Suraj Yengde, on the one hand, I like the fact that he's championing for his community, and in a free society he should do so. There is no reason that he shouldn't go and claim more rights for his people and everything. And there are abuses and they have to be remedied, and we are a free society and they should be remedied. But I think this business of lying, he come up with things like 500,000 Dalits were raped or killed or prosecuted in the 10 years. I mean, come on, he's got no data for it, no backup for it. And he's going to Americans and telling them what they like to hear, feeding this kind of a thing, feeding this idea that to solve the problem of blacks in America, you have to solve the problem of Dalits in India because they are related problems. He's just creating trouble rather than creating unity, and he's not agreeing. He's not interested in a win-win scenario where all the communities can work together and win and be better off. It's a zero-sum game, and this is a Marxist thing. The oppressed must topple the oppressor, and there's no accommodation. You have to dismantle the structures. So he's really into that, and and he's a young man. He's very charismatic, very assertive, highly regarded by his colleagues at Harvard. They just tremendous. He's a big hero there, and he's having fun. So and he writes op-eds in Indian Express. He's a big hero in literary festivals in India. They invite him. So he's a powerful guy, and he's young. He has a huge future. So you have to watch out.
know who is handling these slides. Yeah, okay. Can you just put a slide ahead? 2 slides, I believe. Yeah. So can you see this slide?
Okay.
सर आप सर मल्होत्रा हैं, तो आप अंदाज से आप दिल्ली या पंजाब साइड से होंगे, तो आपको हिंदी आती होगी जी। तो आपको सर राष्ट्रगीत और राष्ट्रगान में से मतलब सब पता होगा, डिफरेंस। ओके, मेरे पास यही से सवाल था।
So I just want to talk about my book.
No, in fact,
because there's so much to talk about. See, we can go on talking about all. I've written many books on different subjects, but each book takes a lot of effort, a lot of energy, and at least I would like that book to be discussed in detail. So talk to me about, and the book has 22 chapters. Each is a different. This one on IIT is only one chapter. So there's so much more to discuss. I could go on here. I mean, the history of national anthem and all that. I know all those issues, but I don't want to go into that. Please, I just want to talk about what I have said and my book, if you don't mind. Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah,
but we have many forums and discussion groups where we talk about these things. But it's better to focus. I hope you don't mind. If you have a problem with the Vande Mataram people, then why use a guest to make your point? Then you shouldn't even come. But if you are here, at least discuss what the topic of the book is. And I don't want to get into your problem with Vande Mataram group. I like them. I think they are doing a good job. If you don't like it, then you should leave. Good.
Thank you, sir.
He's just a heckler using the guest to heckle his gripe against some Vande Mataram group because something he didn't like about the slide. I didn't want to get into that because I don't think it's right for him to do that.
Thank you, sir.
Rajiv sir, thank you so much for coming here. Young people like me consider you almost like a hero. So, I should be standing up also. Yeah, so I have actually 2 questions, and they are actually very separate things. The first thing is that since we are scientists, I'm a PhD scholar. I am working in the area of biotechnology, and I have been trained to ask very scientific questions, academic questions. But when it comes to like very sensitive things, we are not able to articulate the questions in such a way that it would not generate, anger or those kind of sensitivities. So what can be done regarding those things? Could you, let's say in the future, like come out with some kind of YouTube videos or for those kind of things that we basically follow, since we are all techie people and we follow a lot of like YouTube videos and Facebook, Twitter. So could you come out with series of programs that could help us pose and
see, I'm a techie also by training. So I just in the last 30 years switched to studying these issues, but I took my logic, my analysis, my analytical mind, rigor, being open-minded and being able to debate, discuss. So I take that with me, bring that with me. And that is why these people can't stand it, because they're not trained with rigor. Most of these people are not trained with analytical mind. And so when you give them logic and argument, they don't even know, they can't even figure out how to respond. And they start getting angry, attacking you personally. So I get attacked personally, but none of my books got rebutted in any serious way. No one could debunk the claims in the books. I've written so many of them. So they start attacking me personally, because it's out of desperation. So I would love to work with technical people who have an interest in this. And if you want to organize a workshop, then we can do this kind of workshop. And then you can record it and make videos out of it for other people. But we could do a live session, some kind of a conference or a live session to help train our people in this way.
Please introduce yourself before asking the question. And please limit number of your questions to 1.
Good evening, sir. I am Shri from electrical engineering. My question is, we have talked a lot about the Western stamp on the education that we undergo through. So what are some of the very significant measures that you suggest, particularly in liberal arts studies and history, that can bring about a change, I mean, in the Indic way?
So you see, the problem with the national education policy is that it encourages liberal arts without having built an Indian approach to liberal arts. So there's a vacuum, and if we have not developed the Indian approach to liberal arts, and we just want liberal arts of any kind, then by default the Harvard liberal arts are coming. This is what is the problem. Okay, so the people who built the NEP should have developed theories, firstly more Indian history from the Indian's point of view, Indian social thought, Dharma Shastras, Arth Shastras, Mahabharata has got social thought, so much debate, so many arguments, Ramayana has. So, you know, if you look at all these debates about different communities and jatis and fighting this and that, arguments have, so much of this has happened, and there's hardly a new argument there about justice and all that, which hasn't happened in our own. So our own approach, using our own texts to study the what is called liberal arts should have been done. They should have taken 10 universities and given each of them the 5-year project with enough funding that, okay, you start the Indian approach to liberal arts, and then we'll evaluate and pick the best ones and turn it into the national curriculum. Then we can have the NEP bring liberal arts. They should have done that first. See, China has liberal arts of their own kind, from their own approach. You know, France is kicking out the American liberal arts because they're saying this wokeism is bad for our country. See, I mean, any of you know what is the French President Macron's position against wokeism and against all this these new kind of trends to rabble-rouse the minorities in France against the country? Do you know, any of you, do you know what is his view on this? Yeah, I'll tell you what it is. His view is that the French Revolution created this whole theory of rights. But these rights are individual rights. They are not rights of a community. They are rights of an individual. So he says in France, you can't say Muslims need this. You can say you as an individual, if you have been denied individual rights, we'll make sure you get your individual rights. But there is no such thing as rights of that community, because you are then destroying France, because France stands for individual rights of all people, regardless of, you can have a privately practice any religion, we're not stopping you. But you will not get public rights from the state based on your identity, because that encourages vote banks, it encourages group collective bargaining, and it will break up the country. So he's very smart, very smart. So the education minister in France has banned all these kind of liberal arts from US. They were, of course, don't have them in China. Singapore has discontinued a collaboration with Yale, which was on this kind of topic. They've discontinued because they said it is against our country's interest. Putin has spoken openly against this wokeism disease coming to his country. Japan has a pushback against these kind of things being brought into Japan. Israel has fought back. So you see, many countries are fighting back and saying we don't want to dismantle our sense of pride and nationalism and patriotism and our traditional structures and family structures. We don't want this. India, it's a free-for-all. India, there's nobody understands the problem. So the reason we're writing this book is, as more people read it, as more people talk about it, it will put pressure, whether it is on the billionaires, whether it is on the very rich IIT alumni to do something, or whether it is on the government. It is for the young people to use this and create some pressure. So we want your help. So that is why we are saying, support this, and we will work with you, because your voice matters, and we can give you the intellectual ammunition, we can give you the scholarship. We would love to do a Swadeshi Indology conference on this book in next year. We're coming back in February, and we'll probably do a conference somewhere on that.
Just to add on what Singapore is doing, see, if we don't know what liberal arts is, we can at least look at what some of the other countries are doing. So in 2014, Yale University had an MOU with Singapore, NUS, for a 10-year MOU. So very smart. So they just don't have an open MOU. They say, okay, we'll evaluate it for 10 years. So after 10 years, so essentially what the straw that broke the camel's back was a course that Yale taught in Singapore called Resistance and Dissent in Singapore Society. And that the education minister just flipped when he just heard the title of this course. because he said, what has that got to do in Singapore? Singapore cultural context has no place for these kinds of courses. And he went to the parliament and he said, this kind of thing does not suit our ethos. And then they decided that they made up some lame excuse for PR purposes, saying that we haven't got the endowment funding that we had projected and we need to essentially close the deal. And Yale University was considered so prestigious, and Yale lost the deal with Singapore. And people they just take the bull by the horn. They made sure the last group graduated, and that's it. There's no more Yale NUS program. So lots of people, they look at what the content is and decide that this doesn't suit our country or our culture, because Singapore said we have different races and we have different languages, and they've all been working in, they said, what nonsense is this Chinese patriarchy in Singapore? And we've been living in harmony for, many, many years, decades and hundreds of years, so we're not going to do this. And they cancel them. I think it takes, and some of them are actually people of Indian origin, who make such comments. But Indians in India, unfortunately, don't take that stand. We're all very proud that we're having these alliances with foreign universities. In fact, just to add to Rajiv's point also, China's not only got its own narrative, control of its own narrative, but also bringing that narrative into India through Ashoka University's China Studies Department. So that's kind of the pipeline to bring in China Studies into India. And then they have Jadavpur University, Christ College in Bangalore, Somaya College. So they take students and scholars from these universities, and then they have a pipeline through Harvard into Harvard Yenching University and train Indian students and scholars on how China studies should be done in India. That's how smart they are.
We will take 2 more questions.
Hello sir, I am Sarvesh and from physics department, and thanks for coming here. So sir, what I see is there is a lack of synchronized effort from the, maybe you like to call it right wing of India. The left is very deep entrenched in humanities departments, entertainment and all, you name it. So how we are going to fight this long battle? I mean, if you see there is no clear policy from the government, even they are supposed to be very favorable dispensation, but still they are not working on this front. Thank you.
Yes, that's a problem I have. What you're calling right wing or sort of a conservative favoring the traditions of India do not have scholarship. So they are activists but not scholars. There's a difference between activist and scholar. I mean, you people are studying scholarship and you know what a scholar does. He does original work. His work is grounded in facts. It's empirical. It's reviewed. It's debated. It's tested. It keeps improving. I mean, what you are finding is 90% of them are shouting, screaming on YouTube and various manthans, and they are basically they're basically activists. Nothing wrong with that. You need activists. I'm a scholar and I depend on activists to take my information forward. The activist is like the distribution channel of my knowledge. I want to work with activists. So if Vande Mataram is an activist group, I want to feed them knowledge that I've developed as original research, and then they can turn it into more activism. So we need to work together. But if there is only activism and not enough good scholars being encouraged, then this activism is also mainly bombastic stuff, and everybody, all these activists quoting each other, borrowing, begging, stealing ideas from each other, repeating them, and the one who can say it most loudly with a lot of passion and emotion gets more views. So it has become like a tamasha. The whole what we call the Indian Renaissance has become largely a tamasha of people who are just into shouting, screaming, bombastically, but they have not done rigor. Rigor is lot of documentation, lot of evidence, lot of references. This is what we are doing. It is taking so much effort. So we are hoping that all of you will make it worth our while by helping this and promoting this and reading all this stuff. So I'm fully sensitive to the issue you are raising, that while at the political level there is will to do something, and while the popular level people are activists, but the deep scholarship needed to support all this has not been done.
Okay, I'm Ranjit and I teach physics here. I have a question to both of you. To me, the big question is that has there been enough analysis on why do they do that? Is it due to their individual disappointments, frustration and setbacks, and that's why they want to take revenge? Or is it due to the fact that they want to provide an alternate thought on idea, which is genuinely unnatural, but in US system, giving an alternate thought and idea enhances your self-significance and importance or financial gain and this and that. Has there been enough analysis of that?
So we have done an analysis in this book on this fact. So one of the things you should consider is that it is not Harvard bringing this to here only. It is our people going there getting their help. It's like one Raja would go to the East India Company and tell him, you help me beat this other Raja and we will split up the kingdom or whatever. So Indian Rajas wanted the help of the British to fight the other fellow. So some of it was British trying to divide us, some of it was our own pre-existing divisions and jealousies and fights. So now why are the minorities going there and setting up all these big organizations? Why are the Dalits going there, setting up these big organizations, getting them involved, selling out in a sense, saying that I will be your informant and your expert, I will tell you what's wrong with India, and then such a person is rewarded and becomes a big hero. Because the American thinks, wow, we can now help Indians get civilized with our ideology. So there is, and then there is from the top down, from their point of view, there is something I have called Western universalism. Western universalism is the philosophy and the framework of using Western history and ideas as the global standard. So whatever is the Western history, they feel that that can be applied to the whole world. The saying that what the West's present, the West's the West's past is our present, and the West's present is our future. That's what they famously have said, Hegel, people like that. So they are sort of ahead in the civilizational journey, and they want to bring us along, and they're doing us a favor. So there is the religious version of saving other people, and then there is the secular version, the Marxist version of a Marxist class struggle, which is the leftist version. So there's a right-wing version and a left-wing version of Western universalism, which says that the Western lens is universal, should be applied to everybody else. So they have a framework, and the Indian activist, Dalit, whatever, can go there, fit into that framework, make his case and say, as part of Western universalism, I'm bringing you this oppressed group that I represent, and I want your help. And so this is a kind of, it fits, it makes fit. So the counter to this is our people have to first understand this is a game, what is going on. This is a game, what's going on, and we then have to develop our own rebuttal to it. And we found that in doing the research for this book, like many of my other books, there's very little original research going on, and people are not even appreciating somebody who's doing this research. I would have thought that while I went around, the IIT, Pan IIT people would have loved this and made it part of a talk in their Pan IIT event during the year, that we should know about this, we IIT people. They should have. That the TIA people would invite us. That the IITians would go to the Minister of IT and Technology and Export and Engineering, all these ministers exist, and said, hey, listen, you should be launching this book, because this book will spread awareness. I thought that IITians would go to NASCOM and say, help this group. I thought some very rich guys, some well-established industrialists in technology would say, okay, let me buy thousands of copies and distribute them as Diwali gift, because I want my people to know this point of view. Now, I would have thought they would get this kind of support. You see? So, but the absence of this support is an issue that you guys should ask. Why are the people in India and Indians elsewhere so apathetic and so unconcerned? Privately, they'll say you're doing a good job. But they're not interested in actually putting their money where their mouth is, sticking their neck out and doing something. So this business about I'm doing fine, It's a selfish idea. I'm doing fine, and why should I get involved? Maybe you like all this, you do it, why should I get involved? Therefore, we are suffering because we haven't been able to take collective action. Do you want to ask?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir, for addressing the queries earnestly. Chaliya, sir.
Not a question really, but I'm Devendra Jalihal in Electrical Engineering Department. IIT Madras has been attacked, right, in the last few years, specifically on this issue. I can give two instances, and IIT Madras just didn't know how to react. One was an unfortunate incident, a student committed suicide, and it turned, a person committed suicide because of depression and so many psychological things, but it was attributed to the faculty being a Brahmin and oppressing a Muslim student, right? And IIT had no clue how to even react to it. Second is an incident which happened in 2021 and 2022. A faculty accused the entire IIT, director, deans, everybody, of being Brahmins and oppressing him. I mean, and IIT had no clue. And in fact, the comment that Vijaya talked about was in response to that particular incident, right? They had no clue, right? So how do we even educate and create a culture that, to defend this? I mean, I think it's a very big issue.
So my insight into this is that our book gives you the theoretical framework from where these problems are coming. The gentleman who said that you are oppressing me, that language and that point of view has a history. There's a theoretical framework, and you have to understand that theoretical framework. You have to understand critical race theory, what it means. It is a Marxist adaptation into oppressor-oppressed, and there's a whole background to it. There's a whole, and how to refute it, debate it based on understanding it. So IITians should have taken this opportunity and said, let's debate critical race theory, because that's what this comment is based on. Let's debate critical caste theory. So there's critical race theory, and now they've adapted it to develop critical caste theory, which is theory, very elaborate theory. So you need to understand what it is, because then otherwise you'll be just reacting to one at a time, like firefighting. Yeah, there's a fire and the fire extinguisher, you go there and put out this fire, and then there's the next one and there's the next one. But to really understand where these are coming from, what is their logic, how to counter it, you need to understand. Chapter 1 of this book is called The Americanization of Marxism. The Americanization of Marxism is the origin of critical race theory. And then the next is how the critical race theory adapts into critical caste theory. And this critical caste theory is the origin, the theoretical foundation of all of this stuff. All of them are based on that. So if you understand it, it will not be a mystery to you. You will also be able to, first of all, tell the person, I know where you're coming from, and he will acknowledge that you understood this, you're coming from this logic, and then here is our point of view, and let's work it out. So I think that requires our side to do a lot more study, and that is what we've tried to present here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for addressing all these queries so patiently and so concisely. Thank you, ma'am. I would now like to request Professor Devendra Jalihal, sir, to present a token of our gratitude and appreciation to both our speakers.
When they brought this, I thought it's a pizza. Much better. Yeah. This is a very good one. Nice. Okay, I wish I were looking like this.
Thank you so much, sir. I would like to register my thanks and gratitude to our speakers for coming to our platform and addressing the audience about their book, Snakes in the Ganga, Breaking India 2.0. I would also like to thank the faculty members and all of you for joining us here. There is a bookstall outside CLT for all the interested buyers. And we hope to see you all at our next event very soon. Those who are interested to volunteer and receive updates regarding further events, please email us at vandemataram@smail.iitm.ac.in. And after this event, we'll have a personal book signing by the author too. And now we have come towards the end of the program, and it won't be complete without singing our national anthem. So I would request all of you to rise and sing with us.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल वंग विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंग तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मागे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे।